Go aften. Okay, I'm here with Bjergsen from Ninjas in Pyjamas. I'm going to do one of my grilled with him. You have a short career, so the first place I want to start with you actually is just an interesting perspective, I thought, on one of your first big results. Mm-hmm. So one of the first places that Copenhagen Wolves pop up with a nice result was Dreamhack Winter. And the funny thing is, at the time, no one really noticed your team even making it to the semi-finals, because at the time they're thinking like the big result was like, oh my god, Fnatic beat CLG, and then elsewhere they're thinking, oh, Curse failed in the group stage, you know? So really, it was more like people were looking at the failures of Curse or etc. They weren't thinking like, oh, who's this Wolves team? But then we saw from the next few events you were kind of proving that you were like a good team. People will know now that you made it into LCS, you had a good run in the first spring season. So back then at Dreamhack Winter and at the other events afterward, Thorpe and all these events, were you already at a similar level to what we'd see in the spring?
If we were on the same level as in the spring?
Or similar level, we just didn't know it?
Not really, I feel like we didn't really find our playstyle, we didn't really find the picks, pretty much just the overall playstyle that the team wanted to have and what to do, and it just got mixed up even harder since I couldn't play the LCS qualifier and they had to play with Kartard, and Kartard played way differently from me. So first we had to find our playstyle with me, then we had to find a playstyle with Kartard and Deficio on support, and then back to me. So we always had to switch up our playstyles, but near the end of the spring split I feel like we found the way we wanted to play the game.
When we think of someone's career who's considered like a star or a very good individual player, I sometimes think of it like a kung fu movie where he has to like beat the other masters in the dojo and then he moves up to the next place, he has to fight the first boss, you know, and he keeps going up gradually like that. So an early top name mid player that you played early on that people will forget about is actually on Acer there was a player called CitizenWayne. And in the European scene, he didn't have that many big results, but he was known as like a good mid player, and you guys beat them in the final of the NorthCon. What was the experience like playing him? This was like an early win for your team. Like, how good were you at the time, do you think?
Playing against CitizenWayne was different. I haven't played against him much in solo queue. He played a very like variety of different champions and different playstyles. Like I know he played Serath, which is a long range poke mage with burst, but also he played Fizz, which is an assassin. So he could always switch it up, and you never really knew what he was gonna do. But unfortunately, he ended up quitting playing professional league to, I think, start school or pursue his education.
Where did you see your own game at the time? I mean, you had like a sort of a span, so where were you comparable to now? What was like deficient or what was ready to come out?
It's really hard to say. I just feel like I played the champions I like to play. I didn't really have my play style. I just played Syndra. I thought Syndra was fun, so I played her all the time. And yeah, I didn't really like have a specific mindset that this could be my job yet. I just pretty much did it for fun, and I played the champions that I thought were fun but still viable, and that's just the way I started it out, pretty much.
You're known for Syndra obviously because your first LCS game you got the pentakill with that character. What's your approach to like mastering champions? Okay, because I saw on Leaguepedia there's a famous example where the player Flame, who's the top laner for CJ Blaze, so there's a stat where he'd played like 900 games or something with Kennen, and this is like one of his best champions. Okay, are you really someone who just spams it over and over when you're trying to learn and get really good at a champion? Do you like to try and play as many champions as possible? What's your mindset?
It really all depends. On a champion like Syndra, you really have to play it a lot because she's all about mechanical skills. She's all about knowing when you can burst someone, when you cannot. If you don't know your exact damage, you pretty much can't play the champion. That's how it is with many champions, also like Fizz and Zed. You really have to play them a lot. And then there are some other champions where you can kind of, if you have the playstyle down, like Karthus, Orianna, if you have the playstyle down, then you don't need to play them.
What type of playstyle do you think suits them?
Pretty much like teamfight heavy champions that just pretty much focus on farming early game, not dominating lane too hard, but not getting dominated too hard. But I feel like champions where you need high mechanical skill, you need to play all the time. But the thing is, I feel like mechanically hard champions are more rewarding to play. So playing them is also more fun. You can feel like you're actually improving. That's why I played so much Syndra, so much Ahri, so much Fizz, so much Zed, because you feel really rewarding to play because you can make plays, you know? Like that's what's fun about the game, fun about playing mid. And I just think that the more you play the champions, the better you get with them, basically.
So everyone's heard the famous story and seen the situation where you'd said you didn't think Wolves would get into LCS, or they'd have a hard time, at least, you know. and they managed to beat Millenium and they got in. But I feel like people at the time didn't necessarily know just how tough that actually was, because when I looked through the results, like, okay, so Millenium had already beaten you guys in like an IEM qualifier online. At the time, Millenium were actually owning everyone in scrims, and people were saying, all the other pros at least were telling me, like, they're a lock to get in, they're definitely going to get in. And not only that, but they had, like, in theory, like, star players. Like, I mean, Creaton, Tabs, these guys are all in LCS doing very well now. These were all in Millenium. And not only that, you'd even said, like, your team could get into LCS, but you said they just had to avoid Millenium or something like that. Yeah. So tell me, really how good were Millenium at the time, and how much of a shock was it that they got through?
Millenium were really good. Before we started playing with Kautar, we scrimmed Millenium. They pulled out Kale jungle, which was pretty much never seen before, and we were like, oh, Kale. Then we got completely stomped in every single scrim, and they had just really solid individual players. They had Anguish, which was a really good top laner at the time, Tabs, who's still doing really well on the #1 LCS team right now. I still don't know how we managed to win. Or I know that the thing that really made us win was that Kautar could play TP and then babysit bottom, so to say. He could teleport bot and then gank, and then Tess could snowball and carry the game. But I really didn't believe it when I saw it. I really didn't believe it.
I know that was one of the results that sort of set in motion actually Millenium sort of breaking up. Do you think there's a degree to which they just choked weirdly? I mean, in the actual qualifier, when you watched it, did they play similar to how they did online?
They played similarly. Maybe they didn't play as aggressive because, for example, Tabs Fizz, I think he played Fizz in both games, is a really aggressive champion. But if you don't play as aggressive as you do online, if you don't feel as confident, or don't really feel like they choked, maybe after the first game, they have players who were known to be toxic. So if you have more than one of those people, they can easily get arguing, and I heard a lot of rumors about them arguing and Facebook posts and all that stuff. So I think after the first game, they went mentally down, but the first game, I think they were confident. I don't think there was any, like, nobody was too nervous. It was 50-50 the first match.
Kind of how I described, like, individually, I think of it like a kung fu movie where you're moving up ranks, like gradually beating like the next best guy up from you. I often think, from my experience watching like Counter-Strike as well, which is a team game as well, I feel like there's a similar sort of ranking stage to being a pro as a team, okay? So first of all, usually people get really good online. Yeah. Then you have to go to some LANs, and usually they don't do as well on the LANs as they did online, because you have to adapt again to a new environment, you know. And then even in terms of the teams you beat, you tend to have to beat like the mid-tier teams, then you start to beat the good team. You don't just go in and start owning the good teams, okay? So this is one of the problems that I thought your team had in the spring season, okay? You did well in the regular season, you came into the playoffs, and all the buzz was like, oh, they're going to beat EG, they're going to maybe place top 3 or something. But in the end, EG, who hadn't looked that good during the season, managed to beat you. Was your team like ready to play EG at that time?
I think we were fairly ready. We hadn't practiced as much because we had some problems with the whole organization, and our jungler Svenskeren didn't have a PC to practice on. So in that regard, we had kind of a hard couple of weeks up to the playoffs, but I wouldn't say that was what lost us. I think people were really underrating EG actually. A lot of people were saying that EG was a free win, and I always highly respected EG, highly respected Froggen as a player, and I never thought, not even earlier in this split either, even though they hadn't been doing so good, that EG was a free win, because EG are and probably will be a really solid team for a long time.
So since you both play mid lane, you mentioned Froggen here, since you're both in Denmark, you're both mid laners, you're both considered like stars within your teams, your names are always going to be linked and people are going to compare, or they're going to ask what you think of each other. But I read an interesting comment you said in an AMA, I think, where you said, okay, so there was a point in time where Froggen played in this team. I think it was this one called LoLLeague, and you played in it right after he left, basically. And you said in the AMA, his team used to like talk about him or how he played or something. What kind of things did they tell you? Like, what idea did you have of Froggen before you really got to play him? You know.
I remember a quote where my jungler at the time was told that he didn't understand why I couldn't just let him take blue, because Froggen could tell him, just take the blue because I'll kill their mid and get his blue, and then he went out and killed him. Okay. He was a legend in the team, and I was like, this guy is good, and he was good, and he still is. But yeah, it was funny to be compared to him. He was really like a legend. It was funny.
Since people are going to compare you, obviously, how, in terms of like, give me first of all your perspective. Like, if I ask you, taking your own game out of the equation, and you're just an observer who's seen Froggen play and you've played against him, what are Froggen's strengths? What is he good at? How do you describe him?
I feel like he's becoming very good at specific champions. I feel like every week or every other week he has this one champion that he's really good at. This super week it's Ori and Kassadin. I feel like as long as he gets those comfort picks, he's gonna do really good. Froggen doesn't play like 15 champions in LCS over many matches. He sticks to like a few and then he just plays them really well and really solid. I feel like that when we won against him, he was 8-0-4 on Kassadin. He's really solid. He doesn't really make any big throws or mistakes. He always, what astonishes me the most, which is what everyone knows, is that he farms so well. I just saw their game against Lemon Dogs and he had so many CS, even though they had constantly been rotating around the map, and I just thought, how can he still have them in his CS? Because I don't really do that myself. So I really think he's a great player in that regard.
When people talk about the mechanical players in League of Legends, on one hand, people try to downplay it and say, you know, there's not that much mechanics in League of Legends. But on the other hand, I know a lot of the mid players are very good mechanically, and yet if I ask them about each other, sometimes they're like, that guy's better than me mechanically. Is there really like a difference between you mechanically and Froggen mechanically, for example?
It's really hard to say because I feel like we play often different champions. Maybe Ori and Kassadin, we actually overlap, but other than that, he plays a lot of Karthus, he plays a lot of Anivia, Orianna and stuff like that, so it's hard to compare, but I really enjoy playing against Froggen. I used to, right when I got back in the team, actually last split, we scrimmed EG a lot, and it was really probably the most fun scrims I've ever had, because I just felt like it was just Froggen and me going one-on-one, and I had so much fun those games.
One of the interesting things is the players you changed this season, for this split. So the first players you brought in, when you brought in the two guys who used to be in Curse, Extinct and Malunoo, and then you brought in Freeze as well. So Extinct and Malunoo, the strange thing was, Extinct, people who only saw him this season will be like, I thought he was a pretty good top laner, but actually he used to be a mid lane player and he just switched. Had he really never played top lane and you guys just said, well, we need a top lane, and he had to just switch overnight? Had he already had some experience with it? What?
Well, I'm pretty sure he played top or AD as a second role in solo queue if he didn't get to play mid. But it was pretty much, he had been practicing top for a longer period of time because he really wanted to play LCS. And he figured that there were so many good mid laners in Europe that he would have a better chance at top lane. Also because before this patch it was very AP top oriented, so you could almost, I wouldn't say easily, but you could swap from mid to top and learn it pretty fast, and so he did. But he had already been practicing it for a couple of weeks before we picked him up.
In the past, people always used to say it was like a rule that you couldn't really switch roles because the people you'd play against would be experts in that role, and you'd be behind in terms of matchups or what to do with certain items. And yet we've seen this season actually a few players switch roles, and noticeably some mids. Like Tabs now plays AD carry bizarrely, as he used to be a mid. Extinct went to top lane. As someone who plays mid yourself, do you play other roles on the side that if you really had to, you could move to? Could you ever be good at another role? What could you see from that sense?
I think I could be good at another role.
Does it remind you?
Not super fast, but I think I could. I really enjoy playing jungle actually.
Okay. What do you like about it?
I like playing like the snowbally, mechanically skilled champions like Lee Sin and Elise a lot.
Oh, okay.
Because it's kind of the same as mid, because I used to play all these Sin mid and stuff, but it's not something I could do in a week. It's not something I can do in 2 weeks and feel comfortable with in LCS. I think I need at least a month of practice to switch role that fast. Because I pretty much just only play mid, because often I get mid in solo queue, and yeah, I can't switch fast, but I think I could switch if I got the time to.
One of the things I saw from another interview that you'd done that interested me was you said like you're not really someone who gets like affected by pressure much. And the thing is, a lot of pros will say that, and sometimes it's not true, but they're trying to convince themselves, I don't get pressured, I was just playing badly or something. But it actually seemed like you were genuine, like you really meant it. Is this something that was just always the case in your life? Are you just not someone who gets affected by like the moment or something? What describe it for me.
It's really hard to say. When I was at Dreamhack Winter in 2012, I was really nervous. We were playing backstage. It was my first big LAN. We were even playing backstage, and I was shaking. Okay. We were playing against Curse in the group stages, and I wasn't even on stage. I was sitting behind, and I could hear the casters because it was right behind the stage, and I was shaking. And then we won that game, and I calmed my nerves a little bit. I'm really, really self-critical. I can get pissed at myself even after an LCS win. I can sit and so mad at myself because I did. For example, in the Super Week, I played Fizz against what was the team? Just today, it was against Fnatic. And I feel like I played horrible. Really, I feel like I played really bad. A lot of people will say I played well, but personally, I think I did really bad. And it kind of handicaps me in some ways because I don't enjoy my wins as much anymore.
Okay.
Because I'm often like, damn, I could have done this better and this better and this better. So it's both a good and a bad thing, but I think that's also why it's not as much. I don't know if the pressure kind of plays in there that I'm like, fuck, I did this wrong. This is really bad. But yeah, I don't know.
So you were describing there that there was a time like this backstage game where you were really nervous and you were playing like a big team you maybe hadn't played before. Did it just gradually go away? Was there like a moment one time where you just like, just not going to bother me anymore? What was it like?
I didn't play on many big stages. I played at Dreamhack Winter, but then I didn't really play on any big stage before LCS. And then by then it had kind of like my second big stage, so to say, was LCS in Lille, France. And I don't know, by then I had just grown as a person and matured, and I didn't feel like it was as big of a deal. I actually felt like in Lille especially, I really took the crowd and I actually played better from it. Whereas earlier I feel like it gamed me a bit.
One of the interesting things from my experience, like interviewing people and watching people play esports games, is that the best players, like a quality I can define that separates them from good players, is a lot of good players might be amazing online, but then they'll complain that like something was wrong offline, I couldn't play as well. But the really great players, they play even better when it's like the big game and somehow they just elevate to an even higher level. How do you think you do in this sense? Like when you're under pressure, do you actually play better? Do you play your best? Like what do you think it does to you in that sense?
I think it really depends on how the last week has been going. Not necessarily the last week of LCS, but scrims, how confident I'm feeling, maybe even how the game is starting. If I get an early kill in mid, I'm super pumped. I don't even care if we're behind. I feel so pumped because I feel like I did well personally. And of course, winning matters to me, but as long as I've done well, as long as I can like say, okay, I did okay this game, then I'm not going to be super mad at myself. But I can imagine in games like Counter-Strike, you can get really affected at LAN because you don't sit at home. Your mouse might be a bit faster, a bit too slow. But in League, even if it's a bit too fast, a little bit too slow, you quickly adapt because you don't need the exact same mouse speed, for example. But good players just take the atmosphere to them. So just Ocelot just eats up the crowd's atmosphere and just becomes a monster.
So since everyone was so quick to label like, oh, Bjergsen's the star of Wolves, he carries Wolves early on because the team was doing so badly, I can understand why in interviews you'd want to like kind of like say no, my team like contribute, they help as well, like they have their valuable roles. But if we compare it to say football, okay, in football your defense playerman has to be really good, your wingers have to be great, otherwise the striker can't score. But at the end of the day, the person who has to score the goals is usually the striker, that's his job. So I think of that in terms of teams and star players, like even if everyone has to do their job, the star player in some ways can have more impact, or he has a bigger role in some sense. And that also sometimes means a bigger responsibility. Even though you've said like, no, we were all playing well when we were doing well with Wolves, is it not the case that if it's a big game or you're playing against another star mid, you have like a responsibility yourself, like, well, I have to play really good this game or it's going to be very difficult? Do you ever feel like that?
I think it kind of depends on what I'm playing and what my team is playing, because depending on our team comps, I might have the champion that needs to snowball or split push, and I feel okay, I need to not make big mistakes this game. I need to play it safe. I need to just quickly farm up. But then there are other games where we focus. Team comps are often about focusing on one player, and if we have a comp that focuses on freeze, becoming fed or farmed, then I can relax a little bit and just feel. If I'm playing some champion where I just have to wave clear mid, then it's a bit easier. But when I'm playing a champion where I really have to, not exactly carry, but like the entire comp is based around me doing something. So if I mess it up, then we're pretty much going to lose the game. So there I feel the pressure.
Since you say you're very self-critical, and even when you win, sometimes you'll be thinking about what I could have done differently. Most players who are pros, actually, they're generally quite cocky, actually. Even if they aren't doing so well, they'll say like, no, like, I could have beat that guy or something, or I could have played way better. Being like analytical for a second, what area is the biggest area where Bjergsen could like improve at the moment? Is there something in your mind like you're working on, like you're heading towards something?
It's I don't know if everyone can understand this term, but I make a lot of derps. Randomly I just get caught and I just sit there and I think, why the heck did I do that?
Okay.
And sometimes I just go in because I feel like this is my chance, and then I just die for no reason, or I get caught or something like that. I feel like I have a lot of those moments where I just try to make something happen too much and ends up backfiring. So I have to just kind of relax, and it just comes with playing pretty much.
One of the roster moves that your team made that I wanted to ask specifically about was the move for Svenskeren to step down or move away or whatever, and to bring in Malunoo. Now Malunoo, when he was in Curse EU, had some famous results, but in Dragonborns wasn't necessarily like the best player in the whole world or anything. The thing about this is I'd heard from other pros actually, a lot of them were quite impressed by Svenskeren as a jungler. They thought he was pretty good, like a underrated player. What was the thinking in bringing Malunoo in? Like, what are the differences in terms of how they impact your team?
I feel like in the spring split, Svenskeren was trying harder to become the best player. He was constantly practicing, constantly doing everything he could to become good. That's why he was so good. I think he was maybe even the best jungler in LCS at that point. But then during the break, he just didn't feel like playing the game anymore at a competitive level. So he decided to step down, and since we were fairly certain we were going to bring in Extinct, we knew that Extinct and Malunoo had synergy, and we're really good friends, so we felt they would fit well together. I think Malunoo was really underrated in the spring split. I don't think he did as bad as people make him in Dragonborns. Of course, Dragonborns weren't the best team and they didn't have the greatest results, but that also affects how one player looks. If one player is doing decent but the others aren't doing so good, of course it'll look like he's not doing very well either. But I think that some of the games Dragonborns won, I feel like Malunoo really did super well. And every single one of my teammates did. Nobody said, not Malunoo, we have this guy. Instead, we were all pretty much, okay, we have Extinct, Malunoo, they can synergize. We had about 1 week or 4 days for the next LCS week, so we needed something that could fit in fast. And at the time, Malunoo, Extinct, and Freeze were playing together, so they had some synergy. And Malunoo and Extinct have been playing for so long, so of course they had synergy. So we felt like that was the best choice.
One of the weird things about your team is that everyone remembers that the guy who's the support, Deficio, used to be the manager on paper. So it seems weird, like, if he's so good as a support now, what was he ever doing just as the manager? Like, why wasn't he just always the starting support player?
I think it's also just a thing that he didn't feel like. He had a job, he was living pretty chill. I know he enjoyed being a manager because he likes playing Football Manager.
Okay.
But we had some problems within the team in the bot lane, some communication problems, so we wanted to try another support. But then Extra Winter decided to leave himself, and then we didn't have time to find anyone else. So Deficio's always been a high elo player ever since season 1. He was rank 1 on East back a long time ago, back in season 1. But then he just decided to, he never played support, he played mid and jungle, but he just decided to, he just has to play support because he felt like he could really learn support. A lot of great support players also came from mid. I think Madlife came from mid.
Oh yeah, I think so.
So a lot of really good support players came from mid. And he felt like if he really wanted and really tried, then he could play LCS, and it worked out.
I've seen in interviews as well, something every time someone asks you who's your favorite player to play, you always mentioned Expeke. But I didn't see any reason though. What is it that makes games so fun when you play against Expeke?
Actually, recently I've had more fun playing against NorthCon. Not because Expeke has gone worse, but because I feel like NorthCon and I's playstyle overlap a lot with assassins and the kind of thing. I love playing assassin matchups. Okay. It's pretty much who kills each other's first. Okay. And NorthCon is actually really smart. We sometimes talk about runes and masteries. It's actually helped me out quite a lot on some assassins, like Zed. Starting to run some new runes, and I don't know, I just enjoy playing against him a lot.
Another thing you said that was curious to me was you said that you thought that the mid position had the most okay, let me check the quote. It said you had the best control over the map. And we know in Europe, especially because it's known for its mids, then you can have like Expeke, etc., who are roaming mids, etc. Has this always been the case with mid, that it was always the role that had the best control?
I think at some point AD carry was extremely strong, but then again, mid always had the potential to, if you got ahead, you could always go to the other lanes, because you're closest, you can also invade the enemy jungle. I pretty much feel like for the longest time, except for the farming meta that went on for a while with the Nivea Karthus every game, just farming jungle. Other than that, I think that if mid got ahead, you can pretty much snowball it into other lanes or enemy jungle or something. That's also why I chose mid. I played solo queue and I played AD carry and top in the beginning in season 1, and I felt like I can't really help the other lane because it's so far away. Then I started playing mid.
How do you evaluate yourself then in terms of controlling the map? How good is your map control?
I think it depends on the picks mostly, but also the start. I think in some cases I need to get better at warding. I'm starting to get better at buying pink wards, which obviously gives a lot of control because you have vision, the enemy doesn't. That is pretty much free control, so to say. And you can roam to the other maps or the other lanes without them knowing. But I feel like I could definitely improve. There are some mids like Alex lately has been really good at just roaming at times where you don't expect him to, and then you just stand and you're like, oh, I didn't think you would go. But Alex lately has really shown good map control.
One of the things about the European mids, since there's so many of them, we've even mentioned some like Tabs and Extinct who don't even get to play mid anymore, who were considered good players, is that since they're all so good, it seems like one of the things that helps them separate themselves is how good they synergize with like the jungler or something like that, like the way the team operates around them. Can you pick out an example of where this is the case, where there's a really good mid player, but he has great synergy with someone and that just like elevates his game to another level? Can you think of someone?
I don't know if it's as much now, but in the beginning of the split, I feel like Orianna and Froggen in alternate were completely dominating. I saw Froggen pretty much playing Ahri every game, and Orianna either on Hecarim or Lee Sin. They pretty much synergized their picks. If Froggen was on Ahri, he played Lee Sin. If he was on Orianna, he played Hecarim for the good team fights. And I just feel like they always kill the enemy mid. They killed me too when we played them at Dreamhack, and yeah, I feel like in the beginning at least, it's hard because I haven't played against them for a long time now, but they synergize really well.
Do you watch OGN at all?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you watch some OGN, Korea didn't used to be that famous for its mid players actually, but now we've got a scenario where a couple of teams have like really strong mid players. Who are the mid players from Korea that stand out to you, and what do you think about their style?
I really love Faker's playstyle ever since I saw him playing LeBlanc in OGN and completely dominating, because I actually wanted to play LeBlanc, but my team wouldn't let me last split. So when I saw him there, I was like, I could have played LeBlanc too. And sometimes I just need to trust myself in that regard, but he can play different playstyles too. That's what I really like. For example, he plays Ahri, which is really like aggressive assassin, but then again, he plays an amazing Orianna. I have a lot to learn from his Orianna. I tried playing his exact playstyle, exact runes, masteries, and so on, but I just can't make it work the same way. Okay. And I don't know how he does it, but he can just win matchups that I thought were really easy against Orianna. Like, he blind picks Orianna, and then they last pick set, and I feel like in Europe, every set beats Orianna, and then he destroys the set, and I'm just speechless. He's so good. He's so good.
Is there another one that comes to mind?
Of course, Dade or Dade, because of his set play is amazing. That's all I can say. It's amazing.
Actually, I had a question when you mentioned Faker playing LeBlanc. Yeah. So the funny thing is, I thought I'd get your take on this actually. When he did that, all the pro mid players who I spoke to weren't just like, oh, that was amazing. They were like, how did he even do that with like LeBlanc in like a pro game in like Korea? And that was what was amazing then, was the particular character that he'd used in that scenario. Yeah. And I remember after that game, a lot of people on solo queue would like try and go mid with LeBlanc. So as a mid player, what's so nuts about trying to do that in like a super pro game? What's so difficult about it?
Well, I was actually, after seeing that game, I was planning on picking her up again, but unfortunately she was getting the reworks, and I feel like I didn't really have the time to pull her out in LCS. But LeBlanc is the kind of champion, once you get rolling, you never stop. You can see Faker was pretty much killing their support all the time in that game. He just jumps in and one-shots her. That's what LeBlanc does. She just picks someone off and then backs off, and then you slowly get objectives. He's the kind of champion that if you don't get rolling, it seems really weak, but if you get it rolling, it seems really strong. So people can think, how could he do that with LeBlanc? But if he got a good start, then... But of course, it's not just... Of course, he had to do something to get that good start. I think he was even 1v2 in mid lane, which is really hard for LeBlanc because she needs the levels and the gold, but somehow he managed to catch up and completely demolish the enemy team.
So to finish off, I want to do like a hypothetical question. And so for you, I wanted to do it like this. If for some reason, okay, tomorrow you wake up and you're not Bjergsen anymore. You still have like the mind of Bjergsen, the body of Bjergsen, but you're just another pro player, okay? You're a mid player for another team. So you get to pick any team in the world where tomorrow you can just wake up and you'd be their mid player. Which team would like really work around you and how you like to play in your style? And this could be like it can be from any country, which would work if we did this imaginary experiment.
I would probably say Lemon Dogs.
Lemon Dogs? Okay. Why?
I feel like mine and Nuke Dog's playstyle fit really well, so I could easily just jump in and play for him all of a sudden, and we can play some of the same champions, be the same. Also because I have a really good friend at Lemondogs, Sorosiro in top lane, also a fellow Dane, and I love that guy. He's so good. He plays, when he practices, he just practices the same champion over and over, and he's such a nice guy, and it would be awesome to play in a team with him.
Do you have any final words or someone you want to thank or say hello to?
I'd like to thank our sponsors, SteelSeries, Telia, BenQ, and Thor, for helping us through this LCS season, and hopefully for a longer time.
Mange tak.
Mange tak.